Hello and welcome to Unbottled Potential. It's me, Amanda, your host, and this is a really special episode. It is episode 37 of the show, and I'm releasing it on my 37th birthday. So I'm super excited to chat with y'all today. I love my birthday, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to celebrate with, what I wanted to share with you on this very special day of my birth. And I really decided I wanted to talk about, there's so many things that could come up for me. I could talk about my journey being alcohol free, but y'all kind of heard about that at the beginning of the year when I celebrated my 6 years alcohol free. And so I wanted to talk about a concept that has been very hot on social media and also really pertinent in my own life because I think that I'm living it with a lot of integrity and I want to invite you to live it too. And that is living under the philosophy of main character energy. And main character energy for me is making choices based on what you think an audience would clap most loudly for if you were being observed as the main character of your life. And I even like to take it a step further. I like to imagine that I'm in a theater and all my past versions of me and all my future versions of me, my future most successful, most triumphant self, and all of my past little Amandas are sitting in that theater and they're watching this live action of my life. And I want them to clap and be the most proud of me on both sides. And I know that no matter what I do, they will root for me, but I want them to be proud. I want them to be surprised. I want them to be on their feet and clapping. And I just want you to, if you're in a place where you can for a second, I want you to close your eyes and hold that vision with me. I want you to imagine that you're on screen in a theater and it's a beautiful, vibrant theater. And it's kind of like a rad version of the Truman Show where you are the star and you look out into the seats and you have that moment where you crack the third wall where you can see the audience. And I want you to notice that filling every seat are versions of you throughout your life. Most of them you recognize and some you cannot recognize, but you can tell they are so happy and they are so fulfilled because it's the future you. And I want you to see how proud they are of you for everything that you are accomplishing. And as you progress through the action that is the movie of your life, you're going to be encountering you're going to be encountering moments where you have choices to do one thing or do the other, to follow a path that you followed before or choose a new novel path. And so many times that new novel path is something that's a little scary, something that's a little edgy, but something that would make you feel and all the versions of you feel so triumphant if you did it. And when you do that thing, that is living in main character energy. I'm going to give you some examples of what it looks like when you do that. Now, there's always the other path where you do what you've always done, where you're acting from habit. You're acting from typically a wounded, afraid self that is stuck in some patterns. And I can tell you plenty of times where I acted from that self. And I want to have you start to observe when you're making decisions, when you are having conversations, when you are deciding if something is a hell yes or a hell no. I want you to decide from the position of what would the most successful, triumphant main character version of me in this story do? And I want to take you back to a time where I was not living in main character energy just to really illustrate that. And I will actually illustrate one of my birthdays, one of my past birthdays where I was sure as hell not living in main character energy. I would call it Real Housewife energy, which is they think they're the main character. I won't tell you that, but you'll know what I'm talking about. It is that dramatic, immature, selfish, self-righteous, um, victim mentality um, standpoint. And that's unfortunately how I acted so much when I was taking action from not main character energy when I was still drinking, because even though I was on a path of self-discovery, even though I was on a path of spiritual enlightenment, I didn't quite yet get it. And more often than not, I was stumbling and staying stuck in there's surely a term for it in the theater world that I'm not thinking of. But I was staying stuck. I wasn't progressing in my character. And you watched shows like that. You watched movies like that where you watched the character or the person over and over and over make the same mistake or do the same dumb thing over and over again or act in the same way or not grow up or not mature or not see the lesson. And boy, I'll tell you what, I was in that mode, even though I was really trying to get out. I was trying to be more enlightened. I was trying to see the better side of things. And I'll tell you a very humbling yet true story. I don't often go back and tell you all like my drinking stories or stories of these nights out. To be honest, because there's plenty of them that I don't remember. I don't remember the feeling. I remember the feeling of being hungover and feeling anxious, but I don't always remember the actions that I was taking. And this one I remember pretty vividly because it really hurt my feelings and I let that show in a very, very obvious way. That wasn't my best version of me. And I hate to say it, but this happened more often than not. Even for all the times that I was a fun, vibrant, social drinker, there were plenty of times where I was selfish and dramatic and emotional. And this was one of those times. And this was my 30th birthday. So on my 30th birthday, I had just moved to Austin, about a year before. So I love to, on birthdays, I like to celebrate any birthday, but on the zeros and the fives, I like to do something really big. So my 30th birthday was transitioning into a new era. And so I wanted to do something really fun. So I had a 1920s themed party. It was saying goodbye to your roaring 20s. And I invited my new Austin friends. I invited some of my other friends from my college from my hometown from before I moved, not my hometown, but my college town, like before I moved to Austin. And then I invited several people who had been roommates and friends for a long time. And I didn't know who was going to be able to come, but I'll be damned if some people didn't travel from Missouri and like drive or fly in hours and hours and hours to Austin to come see me. And I felt so special. I had ordered this kick-ass outfit and I had planned dinner, and then I had planned to go to kind of this, like, this, speakeasy style, place to get drinks, and then we go out somewhere else. And so I had all these high hopes that to be I wanted to be the main character of this evening, and the problem is I didn't quite know how to hold energy of being the center of attention in the way that I had planned, and so I recognize now looking back at this version of me where I wanted to be this main character, I wanted to be this person who everyone was showing up for, but I didn't quite know how to do that, nor did I know how to show up for other people fully. So I was in this kind of fantasy I was trying to live out, but I hadn't quite created the foundation for it to stick. And so I remember at one point in the night, I was really having trouble being attentive, a host to all the different friends because I kind of had like three different pods of friend groups. And geez, I didn't know how to do it. And so of course I was drinking. And I remember at one point in the night we split off and I guess some of the friends weren't quite having fun or they had something else they wanted to check out. And instead of telling me there it goes both ways here, but instead of telling me, they kind of disappeared. We said we were going to all meet at this third place. And so we leave place A, we go to place B, and my other friends aren't showing up. And I'm like, where are they? What the heck? And so I start to try and call them. And you can, on the cell phones where you can hear it's being sent to voicemail. And I'm like, the hell? They're not ducking out on me, and I felt like the night was just getting started, but I was one of those people that if I got emotional in the wrong way, it did not turn out well, and I felt so hurt, but also so frustrated and so angry and so, like, housewife angry, like, "No, they didn't. No, no, they are not scorning me like that," and so I couldn't let it go. I was crying uncontrollably. My other friends were trying to calm me down and get me to just forget about it because who cares, really? Just keep having a great time. Um, but I was so hyper focused on it, so I couldn't let it go. I kept calling them, and finally they show up. And who knows how long it's been? Maybe it was an hour, maybe it was 2 hours, but I snapped. I went up to them and I remember meeting them at the door and like ripping them a new one. Like, how dare you? I can't believe da 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 da. And I look back and I think, wow, that was a housewife moment. That was like if you know what I'm talking about, like a Teresa flip the table moment. And I just lost it and I was so upset with them. And after that, I kind of calmed down, but I don't really think I had ever like gotten so enraged at someone. And it was a very not beautiful moment, but also it's just a testament of how I would act outside of myself when I was drinking. And I look back at that moment and I think, wow, I feel so tender for that young woman who, hinged so much of her worth on how people were acting. and also who had collected friends who were not maybe the most mature and kind, and were relying on them to come through for her, and also who had created a party container that she didn't quite know how to hold the host space for. Like, there were all of these things that I can see in little vignettes happening in that scene where the perfect storm happened, and I can look back and reflect on all of the places where I had opportunity to grow. And wow, that is just a humbling night to remember, because truly I had set it up to be this end all be all celebration, but it didn't quite turn out that way, and I was worse off for it. So, there were plenty of nights like this, though, where I would get emotional because I had my feelings hurt about something, or a boy didn't like me or talk to someone else, or, who knows? I can promise you there were plenty of nights where I had these, like, emotional outbursts, even though more often than not, I was this happy-go-lucky drinker. There were times where, oh my goodness, I just couldn't deal with this emotional turmoil that had been bottled up inside of me that I had never dealt with. And in the process of the last 6 years being alcohol free, I've done a lot of work to notice where that little girl who wants to be popular, who wants to be recognized, who wants to be celebrated, but maybe doesn't quite know how to be the friend or the hostess that she wants to be, where I can nurture her. I've also looked at that place where there's a shy little girl who wants so badly to be popular and have people celebrate and admire her, and how I can love up on her and show her that she is so loved and cared for, so that she doesn't have to rely on outside validation. And also so that she is showing up as a friend who is attracting the type of friends who don't dip out on you and then not answer their phones, you know? And I have worked really hard in the past 6 years to cultivate this version of me so that those types of things don't happen again. Obviously, least of which is drinking, so I don't have a drunken emotional outburst, but I really tried to show up as a better friend, and also attract friends that are more congruent with the version of me that I desire to be. And of course, there are still places where I slip up and I go into, I'm just going to call it housewife energy. No shade on any housewives, but I think that obviously these personalities are manufactured for drama on reality TV, and that was the character energy I was showing up as so frequently when I was drinking. And I can say even when I wasn't drinking, the way that I showed up socially for my friends was probably not the best and not the strongest, nor did I attract the best and strongest friendships because of that. And there are so many times I can think of where I made decisions based on housewife energy. And I think about me as a young employee at my first job out of grad school. And I think back, I have a really great relationship with that boss now, and how dramatic, oh my goodness, how dramatic I was as an employee when I was a very hard worker, and I would have definitely scrubbed toilets if they asked me to, even though it was an office job. And I've served tables. I've been a telemarketer. I've never been too proud to do anything, but there were very much times where I thought I deserved different treatment or wanted a different outcome, and was in housewife energy as a team member, or as a girlfriend, certainly. And goodness, I could just go on and on, but this is not going to be too much of a walk down memory lane, because I want to talk about where I shifted my energy now. And that is to have main character energy. And this is something that I've only been consciously doing for the past, I would say, year and a half. But I want to really focus on doing this in the next year, because I want to create a life that is really bold, is really beautiful, and some of you are probably now thinking about a 1990s soap opera, The Bold and the Beautiful, which is definitely housewife energy. That is not what we're coming with here. I want this to be a life that I look back on and I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I took that chance. I'm really glad I did that. And of course, there are always going to be places where old wounds are scratched and scabs are lifted, and I show up as the not best version of myself. But I hope that more often than not, what I'm doing is recognizing that as it's happening and pausing the action and saying, nope, not this one again. I choose differently. I decide now that this is not going to be my path over and over again. And this is why my work with A Course in Miracles has been so profound and foundational to my own sober journey, and as well as the journey that I create for my clients because you get to choose differently. You do not have to live out an ancient story that you have been living out and replaying over and over and over, like Groundhog Day, in your relationships, in the way that you think, in the way that you show up with money, in the way that you show up with work, in the way that you show up in friendships, in the way that you show up for goals and dreams and desires. We all have these places where we stay stuck, and you can shift that in an instant. The definition of a miracle is a shift in perception. And so I'm always praying for these shifts in perception, these different ways of seeing things so that I can show up differently, so that I don't show up from that wounded place. And so that I can show up with bravery and courage and curiosity and authenticity. And I will tell you what, that past version of me, the drinking version of me, she was not showing up with bravery, curiosity, and authenticity because she didn't even know who she was. And she was using liquid courage to get at all of the moments where she required bravery. And that's not true bravery. True bravery, true authenticity, true, even like, so many people like drinking because of the crazy and wild stories, but true spontaneity, true bravery like that is not found in a bottle. And that's what I want you to strive for, is this true version of you that doesn't need anything outside of herself to shine, to show up, to be the star of her own show, her own life, no matter if that is on a big, massive stage or it is in your own little community theater, as it were. I want you to really feel like you are showing up with the energy that the crowd, the versions of you who are watching this action play out are just so happy and proud. And I want to give you some examples of how I've been living that in the past year, some different decisions that I've made and things that I've done that have really helped me. And some of them aren't even tremendous decisions. Some of them are small decisions made in a moment. So for instance, the first time that I really realized, what would the main character of my life do? This one is really funny and it is not at all spiritual or highbrow. So I was driving back. I have this list of performers who like I would love to see if there's ever a chance to be able to see these people live. I want to see them, and they're not profound. Let me tell you, I love pop music and 2000s hip hop. So these are people who I just like hold dearly in my heart and love their music. And it's not really anything super special. So one of them is Ludacris. And I was driving back from a town. One of my girlfriends and I had gone on a day trip to one of the towns outside of Austin. And we were driving back, and we drive by this really random outdoor amphitheater that actually was having its last show. So it's going to close down and relocate somewhere else. It's a very well-known outdoor amphitheater here in the Austin area. And we drive by, and I'll be damned if the marquee doesn't say Ludacris, and it was that today's date. And I'm like, what? Ludacris is playing there? Oh my God. So instantly I'm in the passenger seat, like getting my phone out, trying to figure out, what is happening. Like, how do I have to go back to this? I know immediately I have to go back. And so I start messaging friends and seeing if anyone will last minute want to go to this show with me. And no one can go. So I'm just defeated because I'm like, well, dang it. Okay. So at first I was not going to go. And then I get home and I think, you know what, Amanda, what would the main character of your life do? She would put on an outfit, turn around and go and see Ludacris on her own. And that is exactly what I did. I got myself dressed and I bought a ticket online and I turned my ass around and I went back to that amphitheater. And pro tip, um, if you were going to a hip hop concert, but pretty much any concert, guarantee that you don't have to go there until like 3 hours after the gates open. So I show up stark sober to a venue where I guarantee I was the only one stark sober because there was a lot of smoking and a lot of drinking happening like 3 hours early, kid you not, to this concert. So I like just hang out for 3 hours waiting for Ludacris to come on stage, this sweet Midwestern sober girl and a throng of people who are high as a kite and drunk as skunks. I sound like an old lady now, but I did it. I left my house. I went all alone and I had a great time. I'm so glad I did it because it was also such a fun evening, such a great story to tell. I have some beef with some rappers who definitely stayed on stage too long and needed to get off so I could have more time with Ludacris. But it was so fun. And I was like, wow, I did that. What a great freaking story. And a past version of me, I am a very shy person and I don't like to thrust myself into uncertain environments alone. And or in the past, I've been a very shy person. And so a past version of me would have never gone somewhere alone like that. And so doing that was really bold and exciting. And I'm really proud of that version of me for instead of staying home that night and watching Netflix, for going back and doing the thing I wanted to do. Another great example, many of you have heard this story, and I know 17-year-old Amanda was going wild in the theater when this happened. So, this last Halloween, I was invited to a Halloween party last minute, and I thought, okay, well, I have this, like I have a capsule in my storage unit with lots of different costumes that I've accumulated over the years. And I was like, well, I guess I got to pull out a costume. And right before the pandemic occurred, one of my friends, Eric, was going to throw himself an outer space themed birthday party. And I knew immediately what I was going to be for the outer space themed birthday party, which was Britney Spears' Oops, I Did It Again. And if you don't know, in that video, it took place in outer space, totally outside of the party theme I think he was going for, but I was going to make it work because I was just going to make it work. So I had bought a replica of the kind of red leather jumpsuit she wears, and the party got canceled because of COVID, or something. Maybe he had the party and he didn't invite me because he didn't want me to ruin the theme. I don't know. Um, so I had this costume that I never worn, and I'm like, well, I guess this is it. So I put it on, I do my hair, I like really Britney it up. And also, if you don't know, I love Britney Spears. I love her. She is just, um, bless her heart, going through some things, but she's always been one of the performers that I idolize. I just think that she puts on an amazing show, and I'm a dancer at heart, so I just love her performance factor. And so I put on this outfit, go to this party, and I walk in, and there is no one there who doesn't have less than a six pack of abs. Definitely. Everyone there is gorgeous, young, fit. I don't know many people. Maybe I know 5 of the people that are at this party. And immediately I start to get tickled because people are coming up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, are you Britney Spears?" And of course, I was so happy that they recognized my hard effort. And we stayed for a while. Most of my friends who I was with do not drink. So we all wanted to go home early. And we are literally walking out the door when the host of the party pops by and says, "Don't leave yet. We're getting ready for the costume contest. Brittany, you have to enter." And I'm like, "Huh? Oh, oh no." So I kind of like shy back. I'm thinking, no, no, no. I'm 6 years too sober for this. So I pull back a little bit. And then they start to kind of accumulate other people who are going to enter the contest. And I see the people going up and I'm like, damn it. I really worked hard on this hair and makeup. I am entering this contest. So I tell my friends, we can't leave yet. I've got to enter this contest. And I'm super nervous because this is a moment where you don't just at a costume contest, you don't just like walk across the stage and like pageant yourself like this is my costume, here it is. No. If you are entering a costume contest as a character, you have to become the character. So in that moment, I made the decision to take my 15, 20 years of practice and I was becoming Britney Spears. So when I walked across the stage, I was in character. Okay. And we do the walk across and I think, oh shoot, I did that. And then the MC grabs her microphone and I was already proud of myself. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, we did it, sis. Good job for you. It's over. Let's go home." And she grabs the microphone, and there's this other gal who had done something like a little more racy. She was like Jessica Alba in some stripper movie that I did not recognize. And she really went out there. And so I'm like, well, she's gonna win. Obviously, she was scandalous. And no, the MC says, we're gonna bring 3 people back to the stage, and it's so and so, so and so, and Britney Spears. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, I have to go back again. So I don't know what comes over me in that moment, but I go up to the DJ and I say, DJ, cue me up. And he was like 14. I don't know how old he was. He was so young. He's like, what song? And I had to instruct him. And when it was my turn to go, I full on did whatever Britney performance I had in me. And I had a great time. It was so fun. Like I said, 17-year-old version of me is cheering so wildly in my in my theater of my life. And I won that damn costume contest. Of course I did. And what did I win? You're wondering? I won 2 packets of premium beef jerky and some all natural soap and some Thai spices. I'm not kidding. So this is like a wellness center and they have the owner is really rad. He has a food and packaged goods business where he sells all of these things. And so it was like this very high-end expensive beef jerky and beef tallow soap. And so that's what I got for starting my stuff as Britney Spears. I can't make this shit up. And that was such a fun, triumphant moment for me because I had a choice. I could either leave or I could say, what would the main character of my life do right now? What would everyone cheer for? And these are such silly examples. Like, I'm here to tell you that the main character of my life would parade at a costume contest as Britney Spears. Well, hell yes, she would. And that's what she did. And she did it stark sober without an ounce of anything except sparkling water in her body. And I know that a past version of me that was very healing for her. And I know that, man, I'm almost getting choked up over this story over me winning 2 cases of beef jerky dressed as Britney Spears. But I just think of 17-year-old version of me who is so shy, who thought she needed a drink to come out of her shell, who would have thought that was so fucking cool. And I want you to have those moments with yourself. I want you to, when you're making a decision, when you're deciding if you should do option A or option B, what would the main character of your life choose right now? What would a past version of you feel so proud to see happen on the screen? What would a future version of you have done to get her to where she is? And so often it's something that's bold and out there. And there are so many opportunities for you to do this, even if it's just I went to this like speed dating event that I really wanted to back out of because my friend who was supposed to go with me was not feeling well. And I thought, yes, this is my out. And then I stopped and I said, nope, Amanda, what would the main character of your life do right now? She would get up and she would go. And that doesn't mean I want you to always do things that you don't want to do. I want you to ask, do I resist this because it's scary and it's out there and it's stretching me? Or do I not want to do this because it's a ew? No, this doesn't feel good in my gut. And those are 2 different sensations. And I didn't want to do any of those things because they stretched me. Okay. And so I chose in those moments to stretch instead of to shrink down. Now, there are plenty of times where I get opportunities and I'm like, that's a hell no for me. That feels not good in my body. And it's not because my body's nervous. It's because my body just says no. And so I want you to start to learn the difference between these 2 versions of you and how they dance in your head and which it's like hopefully some of you read the Goosebumps, like the choose your own adventure. And I want you, when you get to the bottom of the page to make those choices, I want you to start choosing your own adventure. I want you to choose the adventure. And so often we've relied on liquid courage to choose that adventure. I can tell you all of those scenarios in the past. If I would have been drinking, it would have been a much easier yes, because I wouldn't have had to grapple with the fear and the what ifs as much if I would have been drinking. But it felt so much more powerful to make each and every one of those decisions. And I have a laundry list of those now to make each and every one of those decisions from a clear head, from a clear conscience, from my heart, from my soul, from my intuition, from my most authentic self, from that main character energy. And I am committing in this 37th year of my life to really stand up and do that more often because there are plenty of times where I have a decision to make that I don't share with you. And I really just want here and now in this moment to share that and make a commitment to really, really be as much as possible that main character in my own life. And I want you to consider what it would be like if you chose that as well. And so if you're on board, I want to invite you for however, I'm not just doing this for a year. This is a start of a year that is going to roll into big things throughout my life. I want you to consider what would that be like for you. And if you do something with main character energy, I invite you to send me a note on Instagram if you feel bold enough to share it and tag me in a story. I would love to see your main character energy moments. See those moments where you made a choice that was bold and and just an audience cheering on their feet moment versus an audience saying, "Oh, there she goes again. There she goes with that." And this isn't always, I also want to be clear, this isn't always um a when I say be bold, I don't mean like go tell someone off moment. That's a housewife. That's housewife energy, okay? And I used to have this quote on my, I think I've said this, to some of you before who are listening. I act like I've met every single person who listens here. I know that some of you have heard me use this quote. It used to be on my kitchen chalkboard, and it said, "Our days are brighter when we give people a bit of our heart rather than a piece of our mind." And so main character energy doesn't mean doing the housewife thing, snapping your finger and wagging your head and telling someone what you think of them or what's on your mind or what you think that they can do. It is stopping what is urgent in your body and doing the reactive thing. And it's stopping and pausing and saying, what would the higher self version of me, what would the kindest, most generous, most loving, most self regulated version of myself do? And sometimes it's hard to make that decision. Sometimes it's hard not to defend yourself, not to puff up, not to or sometimes not to hunker down and cower away. It's often very, very difficult to stand in that main character energy. You know, the examples I gave, those were easy enough. I went to a Ludacris concert and performed as Britney Spears. Those and I went to a dating event. Like those are events. But there are so many times also when I have to act in main character energy that I have to show up and say something or change the way I behave, change the way I am interacting with someone. I have to pause and I have to say, what would the main character do right now? Would she shy away from this conversation? Would she hide? Would she puff up and make herself mean? Or would she be tender and gentle and kind and thoughtful and have this conversation? And so many times it's a brave conversation that we have to have. It's a boundary that we need to set. It is something that we need to share from our hearts. And because many of us have gotten used to not being in that vulnerable place very often, it's sometimes difficult to share a bit of our hearts with others. And I want to acknowledge that as well and acknowledge that there will be opportunities when the main character has to pause and go slow and be really thoughtful. And that's really difficult too. And I know that from my own life and from my own practice that it has become easier and more innate and more possible because I chose not to drink, but because second, I chose to commit to working on myself. I chose to uncover that main character versus let her just kind of move forward with the action, as it were. I chose to make a shift in that character and craft her into who she was meant to be versus letting her continue down a path that others had. Well, she had chosen for herself, but she chose it based on what she thought others would like. And that character was totally fabricated. The character that I'm acting from now, for the most part, is not an act. It is just me. And that's really powerful too. And I know that when I'm showing up as the most authentic, vibrant, centered, regulated version of me, that she makes decisions and she talks to people differently. And sometimes it's difficult to do that because it requires bravery and patience and humility. And I am just rooting for all of you to stand in that main character energy when it is hard, when it requires you to be humble, when it requires you to be vulnerable, when it requires you to give a bit of your heart instead of a piece of your mind, when it requires you to show up scared, when it requires you to set a boundary, when it requires you to do something big and bold and brave. Those are all the moments that you can be the main character of your story. And some of them are glamorous and some of them are not. And I would love to also share sometime some of those moments that aren't so glamorous and fun where I've had to make really tough decisions. But I know as I act out that decision that, again, those versions of me in the theater are clapping because it was the best decision I could make at the time. And I want that for you. So if you are with me, I invite you again. Please feel free to reach out and share when you have some of those moments. I would love to celebrate them with you. And I would love to be a member of the chorus in the theater, clapping along for you, cheering for you, and the triumph that is your life. So thank you so much for sharing this bit of my birthday with me. I'm just so glad to have you here. I'm grateful to have you listening to this podcast. I'm grateful to have you hanging out in my world. I do want to say that there are so many opportunities coming up to hang out with me. I have something really special I'm sharing. I haven't hashed out all the details, but I'm sharing something special on Instagram this week, an opportunity to participate in something that I really love and put a lot of heart into. So if you're listening live or live ish, please check that out. And I will catch you here next week. Thank you so much. And happy birthday to me.